Welcome to the CloudPod, where the forecast is always cloudy. We talk weekly about all things AWS, GCP, and Azure. We are your hosts,
Justin,
Jonathan,
Ryan,
and Matthew.
Episode 231, recorded for the week of October 11th, 2023. The CloudPod takes the highway to the DataZone. Good evening, Matt. I don't know, it wasn't very good. I tried for you because you wanted it to be
It was pretty good.
It was best.
It was better than what I could have done.
Yeah.
So.
Well, there you go. It's not my. Usually I'm in tech, not in music. Well, we're without Ryan and Jonathan this week. It's actually, you're lucky you're getting an episode at all. I'll just put it that way.
A lot of coordination.
A lot of, well, I could do it between this hour and that hour. And then I might be able to do it. And so it was just a little bit hectic. Hopefully we'll be back to more normalness next week. But we have just enough news for Matt and I not to bore you to death. And we'll get right to it with Terraform 1.6 getting dropped. HashiConf, of course, was this last week, and so they announced several new features, including things for Waypoint and others. But the interesting stuff was in Terraform 1.6 in particular, and so that is that the test framework, which has existed in Terraform since 0.15, has been basically completely replaced with a much better version. The Terraform test allows authors to consistently validate the functionality of their configuration in a safe environment. Tests are written using the familiar HCL syntax, so there is no need to learn a new language to get started. In addition to 1.6, you're getting config-driven imports, which came with 1.5, get improved to support variable naming. So you no longer have to have it just import existing things with a static ID. New CLI improvements, and they've made several changes to the S3 backend remote state provider to better align with the SDK and the official Terraform AWS provider. It should still work, of course, but we'll tell you things have been deprecated. If you have stuff in your state, you'll need to deal with that. Good luck to you if that's your case.
Yeah, changes to backend state files are always fun.
Especially when they're hosted remotely on S3.
No, the test stuff is actually pretty cool. And it's something I've tried to do with Terraform for years where I've done things like, hey, we put this in a pipeline in a test folder and it does the apply of the test folder, make sure it works and at least runs. But having it actually do, I think there are some other tools out there that kind of does it, but having it all be native in here is nice. I'm curious, though, when this all got added, if it's going to be in OpenTofu because they forked it, or if it's not going to be. When do they add this to the code base?
Well, I mean, it's going to be in 1.6 for sure.
So I thought they forked it at 1.6 alpha.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly which one this came out of.
Or maybe they forked the one before that because that's when they changed license.
It could be. Yeah, it's probably after the license fork. So, yeah, I think 1.5 was last in the old one. One of the interesting things that wasn't part of this particular announcement is that they're also adding in the capability to use AI to help you with your test cases. And so basically the model, they built an LLM model to specifically trained on HCL and the Terraform test framework to help model authors begin testing their code right away. And so you can actually write your tests in more native English and then use the AI to help generate your actual test code, making it easier to use test-driven development than ever before.
That's a pretty cool feature. I missed that announcement. Now I kind of want to go play with it.
Right. I was also thinking I'm going to go play with it. I missed in 1.5 the whole thing about the config-driven imports, because imports are horrendous for those of you who have ever done them, trying to get them into an existing config file from an existing asset. And so I didn't realize they had changed the logic of how that worked. And so they actually improved it quite a bit. But now, ideally, if this idea that you can use variable named IDs, you could actually programmatically probably point it at an AWS account or a GCP project and have it generate an entire stack for you. So very similar to what we've seen with Stackformer and things like that from friends of the show. It's really kind of interesting what that might be able to do as well. So lots of potential in some of these cool things that they're doing with Terraform.
Yeah, I'm going to go through a project shortly of importing a bunch of stuff, and the import feature should be useful. So I'm looking forward to playing with that in a real world situation.
Agreed. Docker is in the news. The Docker company, which has been pretty quiet since they got bought and started charging you for enterprise features, is offering a couple new things in the latest version of Docker. The first up is the new Docker Build Managed offering, and then the Docker Debug service. The Docker Build aims to simplify the so-called build process or the task of turning raw code files into container images. Building images can take up to an hour in some cases, but with Docker build, you can speed up the process by a factor of up to 39 times. It does this by performing many of the computations involved in the process on speedy cloud-based servers, which you can process the code and the build process much faster, as well as they provide all kinds of caching ideas for common layers that are in many, many types of Docker containers. So you get basically a better dedicated Docker build environment managed by Docker if you're paying for the enterprise product. And then the Docker debug is aiming to ease the task of finding and fixing code issues in container applications. Often your applications are written in different languages and have to be troubleshooted using different debugging tools. And developers likewise use separate tools for containers running in production versus on their local machines. The Docker debug provides all the debugging tools developers require in a single integrated package to reduce complexity and simplify deployment to your Docker console.
I think the only time I've had a container take more than 15 minutes to build is when I was compiling Ruby into the container and like source compiling it from scratch. And even then I hated myself a little bit. So I'm kind of curious, even with Windows images, I don't think they've taken an hour. So
you're not trying hard
enough.
I'm
kind of curious. Or I'm doing something right. One of the two.
I can imagine a really complicated Docker image that has to like spin up some of the Java libraries like Spring Boot. You got to build all that, and then you got to bring your Java binaries in. Maybe it's a machine learning workload, and so you got to download a huge data set to your container as well. I can see like lots of things that could potentially be bad and could make it bad. But yeah, typically my Docker builds have never taken more than a couple minutes. I don't do.
Yeah, and like if you're putting that much stuff in your container, I'm not really sure that you're doing it right.
Well, we all like to violate the purpose of these things.
Everything.
So everyone can find a way to break the monster, and then they complain to the vendor, and the vendor says, "Fine, we'll fix your edge case." And this is that scenario. Yeah, but the debugging is kind of interesting. I wish it was done as a sidecar, and maybe it is. I need to go do some more research on it. Because the ability to get debugging tools into a container is kind of a hassle. But if you could just like attach a sidecar to existing container that had the debug tools that could dump from the process, it could be really cool. I don't quite think that's what this is, but maybe it's a step in that direction.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like the first step in kind of having a standardized platform, and then from there they can add on to it. It's kind of what I've gathered.
All right, let's move to Amazon. And as I was saying to you earlier, DataZone is now generally available. You can collaborate on data projects across your organizational boundaries. This is DataZone, of course, the new data management service to catalog, discover, analyze, share, and govern data between producers and consumers in your organization. And with Amazon DataZone, data producers populate the business data catalog with structured data assets from the AWS Glue data catalog and Amazon Redshift tables. Data consumers can then search and subscribe to the data assets, the data catalog, and share with other business use case collaborators. And consumers can use that data via tools such as Redshift or Athena.
I mean, it's interesting that they're kind of starting to put all these pieces together, because I feel like I've built out a lot of this, and having the ability to kind of start to say, not that we just have all this data, but we can actually leverage it is, going to be beneficial. So having the controls and governance in place should be useful for a lot of organizations, and this one place, one-stop shop for it, if you're new to data lakes and all these things, was useful if you're starting net new. Retrofitting a lot of other stuff into it could be a little bit more cumbersome.
Yeah. Well, the big thing I think it's interesting about this is it's kind of a paradigm shift, because a lot of companies, had data warehouses in the day, and they would have a Tableau team or a Crystal Reports team, and they would write all the reports for all the business users. And now you're saying, look, we're not going to write the reports for you anymore. We're going to give them to you. We're going to give you the data in a way you want it, so then you can use your tools or your other software to analyze and import that data. And the challenge is that as the data warehouse team is converted to data lakes, the amount of data has just blown up exponentially. And so the ability for them to do hand-holding things like that is really difficult. And so by being able to publish known data catalogs and then tell end users like, hey, yeah, just point your Excel at this, or point your own Redshift cluster at it, you're now democratizing and giving federated access to these things, but across control areas where you can really manage the governance of it, as well as data obfuscation and different things. So it's a lot of stuff that you would build around a data lake as a data lake team or as an enterprise ML team, that now you're just kind of getting out of the box, which is super nice. and Amazon profits.
Yep. Just want to make sure we're all on the same page.
Yeah. Well, the Amazon C7A instances powered by the 4th gen AMD EPYC processors for compute optimized workloads are now here. They have a maximum of 3.7 gigahertz frequency and are 50% higher performance compared to the C6A. You can get these in a 1 vCPU, 2 gig of memory configuration at the smallest size and a maximum size of 192 vCPUs and 384 gigabytes of memory.
I always like to use the A processor types, the AMDs. It was nice, easy to convert, saved some good money. I always felt like they ran nice and quick. It was much easier to move to those versus, having to recompile or making sure everything worked on the Graptons.
Yeah. The other one thing about the AMD processors, at least in the past, and I don't think I've used them as much, is that for some workloads, like very heavy data computation things, the Intel was always a better performer of it because Intel had the ability to ramp up and down the data pipelines going into the CPU buffers. Where on the Amazon or on the AMD side, you would have to basically do that yourself and just shove as much data possible into the data processing buffer. And so if you had high batch operations, the AMDs typically always perform better than the Intels. But if you had a lot of computational shifting workload, the Intel would typically perform better because of that ramping capability and the way it would handle the sequencing into the CPU. That was all back in like 2005. I don't know how much of those things are really a problem anymore in modern AMD and Intel processor, or if they really are just as interchangeable as you want. But I have seen, in some performance testing on certain systems, the C7 or the C6As versus the C6Is, there was a little bit of a discrepancy in different workloads.
Yeah, I always just found the cost savings was good enough that, throw another server at it and it kind of balanced out even in price to power and speed of the throughput of it. I haven't gone to that level of detail, and you just explained to me a full new level of processors that I've never known about.
You're welcome.
Makes sense, though. Just never been to that low level before.
Yeah. There's all kinds of things. If you really get into the weeds or know somebody who's worked on building processors before, they'll walk you through all kinds of stuff, and you're just like, how did we even come up with this? Like even the whole concept of 3 nanometer production process for chips versus 5 nanometer versus 7 and 9. The fact that we're doing 3 nanometers, like if you actually understand the size of 3 nanometers and that's the level we're doing, it just blows your mind. And I'm like, are we gonna get into sub nanometer level at some point? Like, I don't know how that's even gonna happen. We're gonna have to have like organic systems that create these things at a very low level cell based perspective, because I don't know how you get much lower than 3 nanometers.
So lower than a nanometer is a micrometer. Right. That's larger. It's a picometer. Didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, like the level that we're getting to and the performance we're already getting out of it is like insane. You're like, cool, we want to go better. I'm like, but I'm good with what we have now. I mean, I'll take more power for the same price, but
yeah. I mean, they're saying after 3 will go to 2 in sometime in 2024. But yeah, like the amount of billions of dollars going into this investment in this race, because this is really how we've been sort of keeping up with Moore's law, because we're not really changing clock speed anymore, but we're changing the number of clocks that are on a die, and so it's
right.
It's really interesting. But yeah, there's also really fun things like if you talk to like super geeky people who like create bootloaders and things like that. There's all kinds of fun. You learn about how like the computer initiates things like CMOS and RAM and these things and how that all works. That, if you're just a user or a higher level system admin like we are, in the web space, you don't get into the nitty gritty of some of these fun processor and Linux kernel tuning parameters that you need to understand at a really high level.
I haven't done that since I had to build my own Gen 2 kernel.
Right.
Go. That was fun. And then there was like the people that did Gen kernel and it just worked. And then there's people like, no. I'm going to actually only enable just the 7 drivers I need.
Right.
That was more fun. Many hours of swearing at a computer.
Well, they would do it to like squeeze out every ounce of performance they could out of their box because they wanted to. And you don't do that stuff anymore. It's like commodity, and just you build fleets, and fleets deal with the inefficiencies of that, 1.5 or 6% CPU hit you're taking by having that extra kernel memory being used.
And that was back in 2007, I think it was, when it was a desktop computer was like a server grade desktop that we built into a 3D scanning of your teeth in order to do crowns and, other dental, caps and stuff like that. It was a wand, but the desktop was sitting there. And I've actually recently looked it up, and it's like, went from like this really giant desktop, which the only way they could get the performance out of it was Gen 2 and very specific kernel drivers and everything, all the way now down to like, oh, it's just this handheld, like iPad size device. And you're like, wow, the world has improved over the years.
All right, let's move over to GCP. A couple cool things over there. First of all, they're now moving to passwordless by default because they're now making the pivot to passkeys. And so I thought I would just talk about this for a second. Support for passkeys is now available in Gmail clients or in Google Workspaces. And you can now move away from those pesky passwords that are trying to be phished and stolen from you all the time. The whole idea of this is that it makes your account more secure than ever. It does this by using a passkey, which uses either a fingerprint, a face scan, or a PIN to unlock your device, and they are typically 40% faster than passwords. So basically, you're moving from a how fast can you type in your 16-digit password to some biometric or other key indicator and a couple different components to pull together to become a passkey that you can then use to authenticate to your device or system or service.
I mean, it's a great next step because, let's be honest, passwords are the bane of everyone's existence. Even with, I've used 1Password for many years now, and I have probably several hundred passwords, if not thousands of passwords in there. And all of them are random, and still they get attacked. So moving to something like this, what always worries me is like the YubiKey that I have on my laptop, it dying, and then having to like reset everything. And I know there's a way to like back up a YubiKey to another YubiKey. I just haven't ever figured out that whole process.
Yeah, but the challenge that I always have with YubiKeys, it works great on my desktop, but what if I'm trying to access my mail on my phone, or I'm traveling and I just want to use a library computer? And you probably shouldn't do that anyways, but with the VPN or some other way that it's secure, or maybe your friend's computer you trust. If you don't have that YubiKey, you're hosed. Which is always a bit of a challenge. And really the bigger complaint I always have about was between the phone and the thing. And so then there, people start coming out with like, well, this YubiKey supports Lightning and USB-C. So you have best of both worlds. And, but that's just a hassle and not very convenient for what you're trying to do.
I mean, you could have just been on an Android and I just moved my YubiKey to my phone and just pressed the button the first time and I was in.
Yeah. See, that would.
I have to have a special one.
Yeah. I don't want that. I'll keep my blue text.
Have you been waiting months and months to hire your new AWS, GCP, or Azure architect only to have them be poached at the 11th hour by a startup with a juice bar? Initiatives stalled because you're having trouble hiring? Well, I have a simple solution: Foghorn Consulting. Foghorn Consulting provides top-notch cloud engineers to the world's most innovative companies and can be burning down your DevOps and cloud backlogs as soon as next week. Foghorn certified AWS, GCP, and Azure professionals are armed with infrastructure as code, and from day one will be designing performant, optimized cloud-native or hybrid environments that deliver on the promise of cloud. Their FogOps solution even provides on-demand cloud engineering to augment your existing teams. Visit www.foghornconsulting.com or send an email to cloudtalentnow@foghornconsulting.com and tell them the CloudPod sent you. Your dedicated FogOps team is with you for the long haul, and they bring their own juice.
Google Cloud is now going to go GovCloud, or Governor for you, those in the UK. They're going to go with the Google Cloud Public Sector UK, a new division dedicated to helping government departments and agencies across the UK transform their operations with hyperscale cloud capabilities and their ultra-secure cloud configurations. So basically, the FedRAMP IL2, IL4 type things will now be supportable to you in the UK to meet the UK public sector requirements, which is great to see, as I think there's a lot of interest from public sector companies or agencies all over the world who want access to more and more cloud resources, and this makes your life easier.
Yeah, I mean, it's an easy checkbox for them to say, great, we're in their GovCloud. We still have to set it up securely, but we don't need to do all these extra things to make it be that way. And it's just, I think you're going to see this for every government regulation, if like they've already been doing, for every country over time.
Vertex AI feature store built with BigQuery is now ready for predictive and generative AI capabilities in public preview. The feature store is a fully powered by your organization's existing BigQuery infrastructure and unlocks both predictive and generative AI workloads at any scale. The feature store is a centralized repository for the management and processing of machine learning inputs, also known as features. So this is interesting. They kind of mix in here generative AI and non-generative AI into one use case for basically the feature store. But anytime you can start storing common patterns that your team is using to help train your models or train your different components to then feed your generative AI or your ML workloads, this is a great capability and feature that I would recommend. They did have a couple of quotes in here from like people like Shopify, Mark Antoine Bellinger, senior data developer. Feature Store 2.0 is a significant improvement in design. The reconfiguration of BigQuery as the offline store is a key change, eliminating the need for data duplication. And the speed of that low latency online store ensures quick online inference for machine learning models that will unlock new live and responsive tools for our merchants. These improvements are a testament to our partnership with Google Cloud, and we're excited to see how these continued improvements can provide our merchants with an unfair advantage in the future.
Yeah, I mean, just hey, we've done it once, we can store it, we don't need to regenerate it, multiple times and have it be exposed to multiple teams or, departments or whoever it is. That right there is going to be key and really help everyone out. So, we'll save you on your bill. It's stored. He mentioned here the low latency online, so it should be quick to access. It's just to me, it's the next step in a lot of these things is now that we have the output from all these models, we want to be able to use it in a, scalable, easy manner.
Agreed. Alloy DB Omni is now generally available. This is the downloadable edition of Alloy DB, which offers a compelling choice for workloads, providing the flexibility to run the same enterprise class database across your on-premise environment or even other clouds or developer laptops. Alloy DB Omni even includes support for Alloy DB AI, an integrated set of capabilities built into Alloy DB for Postgres to help developers build enterprise-grade Gen AI apps using their operational data. They're also launching a preview of the Alloy DB Omni Kubernetes operator, which simplifies common database tasks, including database provisioning, backup, secure connectivity, and observability. Alloy DB Omni is available with a monthly subscription for a 16 vCPU starter pack at $1,295 per month, or in monthly subscriptions of 100 vCPU blocks for $7,000 a month, with discounts on 1 or 3 year commitments.
It's only 100 vCore. Come on. See what else they can give us.
Right. I sort of am kind of disappointed they didn't just make this open source because, Postgres, of course, is already open source. And if Alloy DB had a significant advantage over Postgres, they could basically start dominating all kinds of workloads that are living on Postgres today and then just migrate them into GCP when you wanted to no longer manage those things. Very similar to what Azure does with SQL. Yeah, you can manage your own SQL server, or you can pay us to do it and take care of all the heavy lifting.
Yeah, isn't this just they've kind of made their own database, right? It's their own database, kind of like Aurora.
It's very similar to Aurora. It's Postgres compatible. It basically uses similar technology under the hood, but it's their own custom thing they built to be web scale and native to cloud and all those things. But it's pretty powerful. I've seen a couple of tests going from just Postgres on Cloud SQL to Alloy DB Postgres. And the performance improvements are pretty nice, just like you're going from Aurora, from RDS or Postgres to Aurora. And Aurora is not available to you in any way other than on the cloud. So, this is a chance for Google to maybe say, hey, we can provide something that now you're not locked into us. You can run on any cloud and you get this advantage. That'd be nice. Again, make it open source and make it available for me to get started anywhere. Could be a hugely valuable proposition.
Yeah, but also they want you to kind of use their compute and it's the same thing on Azure as Hyperscale and SQL Server. Just they still.
And then the Cloud Spanner, which is not available on-prem, although they do have a mock capability, I think, agent for local development. But basically there's a new version of Cloud Spanner, which is their managed database service that's cloud native that will enable customers to process their information faster and more cost efficient than ever. The new Cloud Spanner focuses on improving the database performance. According to Google, the database provides 50% higher throughput at the same price you used to pay. They also say this now gives Cloud Spanner an edge over Amazon DynamoDB, which is funny because I think they always said that Cloud Spanner was more performant than Amazon services, but never called anything out specifically. And apparently all this time, Amazon DynamoDB was faster until now. So that's sort of funny. You can also now get your database up to 10 terabytes in size, up from 4 terabyte limit previously. So not only do you get a faster database, you can put more data into it. and cause yourself more pain if it goes wrong. Your 10 terabyte database is failing.
It's interesting. I think something in AWS, I think RDS originally had a 4 terabyte limit. So does Microsoft SQL Managed SQL Server. And this and Cloud Spanner all had a 4 terabyte. And the next level, I think, for everything is 10 terabytes. So there has to be something with that 4 terabyte. I know, like, back in the day, there was with like storage and 32-bit and all that type of stuff. But it's interesting that to me that all of them are at 4, and then it immediately jumps to 10, which is just an interesting.
So I would, and I don't know this for sure, so I'm speculating. So I believe there's, you're talking about a 4 terabyte file. You start getting into file handler limitations of what you can do. And what I think they do is when they go from a 4 terabyte, they go from like single file type stuff to a striped type data set. And when you're going into a striped data set, you're typically talking about rules of 3 or 5. And so if you're doing 2 terabytes times 5 drives, you end up at 10.
You're at that rate. Yeah. Okay. Makes sense. I'm going back in my day to all my, sysadmin infrastructure RAID stuff in my head now.
Yeah. So it might be a completely different reason why they do 10, but that's the logic one in my brain is that if 4 terabytes was 2 terabyte drive files put together, or a single file limitation of 4 terabytes, then you want to divide it up and divide or conquer, and RAID 5 makes sense. And there you go. So,
I'm sure there's a lot more detail. Someone that's actually run these things.
I'm sure there is.
Do you know with this if it's is it just like in place, or is it something that you have to upgrade? Because I didn't see that in the article.
It'll get upgraded in place. So it is released, but you may not have it quite yet. So it is being rolled out to all of their customers right now in some type of canary model, I'm sure. But I'm sure if you really need more performance in your Spanner database, you can probably reach out to support and get access to it maybe a little faster.
Yeah, I saw the rollout, but I didn't know if it was like rollout and then enable something. So,
yeah, no, you're going to get, getting more disk space. You'll have to tell it you want that. But but the performance improvements, you'll get that just natively as they roll it out to everything.
That makes sense. So in about 2 months from now, check your Cloud Spanner, see if you can scale it down.
Yeah, exactly. All right, let's move to Azure. And this story you added to the thing because you thought it was cool. You can now apparently use CMK or customer managed keys at the database level with Azure SQL. Previously, you could only apply encryption at the host level via TDE. But with this new capability, you can add encryption key at the database level on top of the TDE key to give you per database encryption.
Yeah, so when you're running a multi-tenant solution, having per database keys is definitely a little bit more preferred. So before you have to have it at the whole SQL level. So if you want to have different keys, you would have to launch different SQL servers, which means you can't use it. So this, for me at my day job, is going to be extremely beneficial.
That's great. I'm glad to hear it. I'm surprised this didn't exist already, because I'm pretty sure an on-prem SQL server that is Azure SQL, you can deploy TDE on a per database thing. But when I was thinking about it after I talked about this earlier, I do think it was on an instance level or potentially on a data file level or that limitation. So you end up having to basically put in, if you enable TDE, basically you have to have a temp space for each TDE key you want to use. And so you basically kind of end up with like microsegmentation of the instance. This might be better than that. So,
yeah, when I get to play with it, hopefully soon, it will be a nice thing.
Well, if you're excited to test something else, you can also now resize your dedicated hosts. That's now generally available to you. This provides you dedicated physical servers for your workloads and now allows you to add more CPU and disk size and memory to them to meet your growing needs on your massive, expensive box.
I mean, most of the time I've heard that people need dedicated hosts besides for Mac workloads is Windows Live. Before that, you just couldn't resize them at all. Kind of surprising. So I guess once you launched it, you were stuck with it. Definitely see this being a valuable thing to, as you grow. Hey, I just need to grow it, and it doesn't not take down everything, move it over, relaunch it. At that point, you're not really that cloud native at that point. So.
And then Microsoft has given us a terribly named service this week, winning the terrible name for product award once again. Microsoft Azure Playwright Testing is a new service that enables you to run Playwright tests easily at scale. Playwright is a fast-growing open-source framework that enables reliable end-to-end testing and automation for modern web apps. And Microsoft Playwright testing service uses the cloud to enable you to run Playwright tests with much higher parallelization across different operating system and browser combinations simultaneously. And this means faster testing and quicker troubleshooting, which helps speed up delivery of features without sacrificing quality. Now, I did blame them for the Playwright part, but apparently it's an open source component, so blame the open source community for that one instead. There are 3 key benefits for the Microsoft Azure Playwright testing capability. First is scalability, because it scales to meet the needs of even the largest, most demanding web app. Reliability is built on top of the Microsoft Azure platform. Really? That's your play? Built on top of Azure makes it reliable? Not sure.
Hey, they gotta have 3
and
things.
then ease of use. Azure Playwright testing is designed to be an easy-to-use capability, and you can get started quickly without having to make any changes to existing Playwright test code.
I mean, if you're already using the tool, adding on the ability to do unit tests, and launching, I think from what my understanding is that it will actually launch web browsers. It can kind of do, multiple testing on OSs and web browsers and kind of mix and match and make sure it all works. The parallelization of it is definitely going to be key. And, if it works, great. I mean, it means that you have better tests and less bugs in your application code. I'm all for testing.
Have you ever heard of this Playwright thing before? This is the first time I've heard of it.
100%.
Wasn't Appium or something? Wasn't that the big one that everyone used for web testing and web?
Selenium was the big one, I know.
Selenium is, that's the other one I'm thinking of. Yeah, I don't think I've heard of this one. Oh, is it on the Node.js community? I don't know.
Yeah, Node.js.
Oh, it says Node, Python, Java, and .NET.
All the examples I originally found were from Node.js, so my assumption is maybe they started there and then moved across.
That's very possible. Yeah. Of course, they don't have a very simple, where did we come from part of their webpage. Tell me this answer in 3 seconds. Yeah, interesting. I'm going to check it out because these type of things are always interesting to... they're always the devils in how do you create the tests versus how do you do the other parts of it. So, all right.
Yeah, I'll ask a few of my people I know in the QA world if they've used it, and if they have, I'll get back to you guys.
Yeah, you should ask your boss. She loves these type of tools from the QA world.
She was one of the people I was going to ask. I have a few other friends in the QA world, weirdly, so I was going to ask a few of them and see if they had anything.
Well, very good. That is it. We made it through the show, just the 2 of us.
Hopefully we didn't bore anyone, but I think it was probably one of the faster shows with only 2 of us.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing is the less people you have, the show goes a lot shorter. So, well, I'm gonna go get to my weekend, and I'm sure you're gonna do the same. So, have a great week. We'll see you next week here at the CloudPod.
Bye, everyone.
And that is the Week in Cloud. We'd like to thank our sponsor, Foghorn Consulting. Subscribe on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts, and tweet us your feedback at #TheCloudPod. Or join our Slack channel. Go to our website, thecloudpod.net, for sign-up instructions.